Okay, good morning. We're going to start today Mem Aleph Amud Beis by Taner Rabbanan on the top, second to the top line. Okay, thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. Supposed to by learning, we should have basic English. Okay, what was the last thing that we were learning? We introduced this topic of Matirin mi beged lebeged. It's Machlekes and Masechta Shabbos. If you're allowed to take tzitzis off an old beged. Good morning. Good morning, Moshe. Discussing if you're allowed to take tzitzis off an old beged and put it on a new beged, and we thought we had a proof that you're allowed to. We said no. Doesn't mean that you're allowed to. It just means that if it's being worn out, if it's disintegrating or something, then you can take the tzitzis off and put it on a new garment. Anyway, today we start with Taner Rabbanan. Start in a brisa that talis shet kula tchelas. The garment itself is blue wool. So, kol mini tzivonim peitzim ba. When you're putting in the white strings could be any color. Chutz mikala ilan, but they can't be the blue, the non-kosher blue. There's two types of blue wool, right? Chelas and kala ilan. Chelas is from the snail, and kala ilan is the fake, the Chinese, the Hong Kong version of chelas. So you can't use kala ilan in the white strings, but you can use any other color. Yeah. Okay, what's the pshat? Why can't you use kala ilan? Rashi in his first pshat. Rashi has the first pshat and then the second pshat. They're not actually next to each other. The first pshat is it's possible that someone may think that it's tchelas, sell it to someone else. The person will say, "Oh, I have tzitzis with tchelas. They're all tchelas over here." He'll take out a string or two and put it into his new tzitzis. He's going to put it in his new tzitzis. He's going to think that he has tchelas. He really has kala ilan. He's putting in this. It could be that he's going to have shatnez. When are you allowed to have shatnez in tzitzis? Only if it's the actual tchelas. You can't do it if it's kala ilan. Kala ilan is the fake blue. You can't do it. So this is going to come to a problem. You're going to be using kala ilan in your tzitzis ever. You can't use kala even for the white strings. So someone may think that it's Rashi's first pshat. Rashi's second pshat, the ikar, Rashi says. You have to jump down in the Rashi to see this. Almost a little over halfway down, Rashi says, Lishnach ikar chutz mi kala ilan ashnei marish b'kaptinan. That apparently the Torah wants you to have two different colors. And if you're going to have chelas, kala ilan, you don't have the two colors. You're supposed to have the two colors. Okay. Meisve, yeah. Very good. That's a problem. Hillel and the Mefarshim here are discussing that what about that it says that it has to be hakanaf, which is min kanaf, and the answer to that is that that's only like din lechatchila. If you're able to, if you don't have it, then it's fine.
This is Korach's question.
Korach's question was, do we need tzitzis at all? And that representation was that he was saying, if we're all holy, why do we need you? Why do we need a leader? We're all good. The whole thing is tchelas. We don't need a little string to stick out, to be in charge, right? Yeah. Okay. Meisrei, the Gemara has a question. Talis ein peiter ba ella mina. Says that for a talis, you need to have the same color as the garment. We thought meant that it's supposed to be white. However, if it's, let's say the garment is red, then you would put in red strings. Two red strings, two tchelas strings, right? Mina. Talis shekula tchelas, maybe tchelas for davar acher. If it's blue, then you have to have the tchelas, but you also have to have something else. Maybe like Rashi said before, that you're supposed to have two colors. I'm not sure about that. The symbol of when's the Zman for Kriya Shema that has to do with you can see between blue and white. That was just an example. And then the Gemara, and then we actually hold that to be able to recognize your friend from 4 cubits away. We don't hold the blue and white anyway. But that was just an example. Yeah, that was just an example. It doesn't mean that your tzitzis need to be blue and white. Just saying how much time, how light it was going to be for them.
Oh man, it's worth it just for that. Just for that.
So one step closer to coffee. So now it says so. Talis it's called a tcheles. Maybe tcheles with davar acher v'tela, but you put tcheles in something else. But kala ilan layavi, but don't bring kala ilan. Heavy kosher. Turns out if you bring kala ilan b'diya, but it is kosher. We said before that chutz mi kala ilan, that kala ilan is not kosher. So this seems to be a contradiction, one brisa to another brisa. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Nachman Yitzchak answers. He says like kasher. It's not a question. Kan betalas basar ba'chutin. Kan betalas bashmein chutin. Here the talus has 4 strings. Here the talus has 8 strings. Now there's 2 ways of understanding this answer. If it has 4 strings, so then what it could mean is like this: that a talus that has only 4 strings, it means 2 tchelis and 2 lavan. There's no room there for kala ilan. But if a talus has 8 strings, and you already have 2 tchelis and 2 lavan, other ones that are extra strings, but we didn't give them amount of strings that you have in a talus yet. I think it's going to be a machlekes bisham bisil coming up. But apparently you can have more than the strings that you have. So you have more strings. So then it doesn't hurt to have the extra strings kala ilan. You already have what you needed. It's the chatchila you don't. But it's kosher if you have extra ones. Now, that's one pshat. But once you have the basic, you can have the more. That's one pshat. Then there's another pshat. Other pshat is from, I think, Rabbeinu Gershon. This is involved. This is different pshatim about if it's 4 that are 8 or if it's 2 that are 4. Tosfos learns that the talus of 4 strings really means that there's 2 strings which turn into 4. That he didn't actually put in any tchelas. So if he was using kala ilan, then that would be in place of the white strings. Talus of 8 strings is when you have 4 strings that's folded over, which is the way we do. So then we may end up taking strings from it to another one. Anyway, okay, there's different pshatim. But he says here, quotes Rabbeinu Gershon, that if it's kala ilan, that if it's when is it kosher b'diavad? That's if it's 4 strings, because you're not going to take off an extra string. What were we worried about? That if it's you may end up removing a string from this one and putting it on another talus. But if this talus only has 4 strings, you're not going to remove one. So when is it a problem? When is it puzzle? Is if it has more than 4 strings, because then you may remove one and end up putting it on another. It's exactly the opposite. It flips the pshat. Yeah. It flips the pshat. Where's the problem? Whenever it says kan, this is this, kan is here, and kan, this Bryce is talking about this, is talking about that. You can flip it both. It can go both ways, and here we have an explanation for each one. Whatever the case is, that this whole concern is that you're going to take off one and put it on another one. It says shamet mina matirin mi beged lebeged. We see from this that you're allowed to remove tzitzis from one garment and put it on another garment. This was yesterday's Gemara, which we mentioned. We're going to elaborate on that today. We see that you can take off. The Gemara says, Dilma di Yavad. We don't mean that you're actually allowed to. We're saying that if you do it, if you took it off, you may end up putting it on another one thinking it's tchelas. Not that this is not a raya that you're allowed to remove tzitzis from a garment and leave tzitzis without a garment. Let's compare this too, just for just to get an idea. When someone leaves a house, they move out of a house, they're not supposed to take the mezuzah off. They're supposed to leave the mezuzah for the next tenant, if it's yours. So similar to that is if you have a pair of tzitzis, you're not supposed to take the tzitzis off. You're supposed to leave the tzitzis on. That's the al derech zeh, just a comparison. Yeah, we had a discussion about that exactly. Okay, let's take a look at this new Gemara Itmar. This is the one that we've been referencing. Rav Amar, Rav holds ein matirin mi beged lebeged. You're not allowed to remove tzitzis from one garment to put it on another garment. Let's take a look at Shmuel, then take a look at Tosfos. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says matirin mi beged lebeged. Shmuel says you are allowed to. You are allowed to take off a garment, put on another garment. I want to point out, Tosfos says, I don't know if you see on the side, Rav Amar ein matirin. Rav says that you're not allowed to take it off. Now there's a machlekes if tzitzis is chayvas gavra or chayvas talis. What was that? Remember we had this discussion. Is it obligation on the person or is it obligation on the garment? Now, according to Rav, it would be very simple to say, ein matirin mi beged lebeged. You're not allowed to take it off because it's chayvas talis. But you take it off. How could you take it off? It's an obligation on the garment. You can't take it off. But if you say chayvas gavra, then who cares if you take it off? Tosfos says, "Afil man damar chayvas gavra." It's savarav dein levatel mitzvah satala. Rav still holds that you're not supposed to take it off, even if it's chayvas gavra, the obligation on the person. Like we find by mezuzah, that someone got punished for taking a mezuzah off, even though the mitzvah of mezuzah is not a chayvas bayis; it's a chayvas hadar. The mitzvah of mezuzah is not, you own a house that needs a mezuzah. No, you live in a house that needs a mezuzah. It's only living in it. You move out, so then you don't have a mitzvah. But nevertheless, you're not allowed to take it off. So too, the wearing of the tzitzis requires the tzitzis. Wearing of the garment is what requires it. But you're still not allowed to take it off, even though it has no obligation. You see, you follow that? Now, then Tosfos goes further. He says the opposite. He says, according to Shmuel, that says that you're allowed to take it off. You're allowed to take it off, even if it's chayvas talis. Even if you hold that its obligation is on the talis. Why? He says because if a person would only have one thing of tzitzis, he would put it on the one that he's going to wear, not the one. And Tosfos concludes v'leidami lemezuzah. Shmuel would say it's not comparable to mezuzah. The question is, why is it not comparable to mezuzah? I want to point out something very interesting here. There's a shita mekubetes on this Tosfos that says, "Lefi shehi lishmar min hamazikin." The mezuzah is to protect from demons. V'nitla min habayis. If you take it off the house, since a Jew is living there, it's as if you're being mazik your friend. Maybe he won't find another mezuzah right away. This is very surprising that the commentator should write this, because the Rambam writes that you're not supposed to view a mezuzah as a protection. You view it as a protection, you're belittling the mezuzah. Mezuzah is because it's a command from Hashem. It's not superstitious. Yeah, but the Rambam writes very strong. Anyone that says that he's putting up mezuzah because of protection is really off. Anyway, here it seems to say that the mezuzah is a protection. It clearly says, I think the Rebbe learns that the Rambam doesn't mean that you're not allowed to say the mezuzah is a protection. You're not allowed to say the mezuzah is only a protection, and that you're doing it because of the protection. The mezuzah is because it's a command. It happens to have this Indian segula as well, which plays out in this. Anyway. Right.
Wouldn't that be the same?
Oh, we're not talking about taking it off to get it checked, or we're not talking about to upgrade. We're talking about to take it off to put it on another garment and leave this one without it. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Shmuel Amar, okay, Rav Amar in madlikin miner l'ner. Rav says that when it comes to Hanukkah, you're not allowed to use one candle to light another candle. And the concern over there was because it's as if you're weakening the first mitzvah. So on behalf of the other one, but Shmuel Amar Madlikin Minel, and Shmuel says no, you are allowed to use one candle to light another one. Another machlekes. Rav Amar Ein Halacha Reb Shimon Begreira. We don't pass like Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon was mater to drag a bench on the ground, as long as you don't have intention to make a groove, right? Reb Shimon holds that davar she'ein miskaven. If you don't have intention on Shabbos, you're pater, or maybe mutter. Yeah, mutter. Yeah, so.
Isn't there a difference? Like if it's heavy?
Right. If it's going to be psakresha, that's a different story. But if it's not necessarily going to make a groove, you're allowed to drag it, as long as your intention is not to make the groove. This the ditch. So Rav says we don't paskin like Reb Shimon, and we're strict. Shmuel Amar halacha Reb Shimon. Shmuel says we're lenient, like we hold like Reb Shimon that if you don't have intention, it's permissible. We have three machlekes in between Rav and Shmuel. Taking tzitzis off, lighting candle, and also to make the drag. Amar Abaya says, "Kol mi l'demar Rabbit k'Rab." Abaya says everything that Rabba did. Abaya is a student of Rabba, so he talks about his teacher with the word mar, the master. Everything that the master did, like Rabba Abaya grew up in Rabba's house. Also, he says he always paskin like Rav. It's easy to remember because Rabba, right? Easy. Labar mehani tlas, except for these three. The Ovid k'Shmuel, that he paskin like Shmuel. Okay. Which are? What are the three things? Matir be beged lebeged. You're allowed to take tzitzis off one and put it on another. Madlik minel iner. You're allowed to light one Hanukkah candle from another one. Balachik Reb Shimon Begreira. The Tanya was taught in a brayser. Reb Shimon Begreira the mita kisi v'safsel actually is kavan lasacharetz. It just gives us the source of what Reb Shimon was referring to. It's not telling us a proof that Rabbah paskin like this. It's just telling us what the case was. Okay. He says that he paskins like Shmuel in these three cases. We have a different tradition, is that we go like Rav Dinei, Isurei. Rav is all ritual law, Kashas and Shabbos and all of those. When it comes to monetary law, we go like Shmuel. This is a different tradition over here. This is saying everything is Rav except for three things. We have another tradition about Rabbah himself that we say we always go, if Machlekes Rabbah and Rabbi we always go like Rabbah, except for three things also. There's another, right? Raya Achrein, Ariv Tzidin v'Raya Achrein, I think it says. Yeah, we've had that. Rabbi Yehuda Masa Lei Lekatra. Rabbi Yehuda would give his talus to a launderer, and he wasn't concerned that the laundromat is going to take off his tzitzis, his tchelas, and put on kala ilan. He wasn't concerned about it. Rav Chanina Avad Le Sisa. Rav Chanina, how did they translate Sisa? He would tie it up into a ball.
Roll it into that.
The last one, Ravina Chayet Lumechat. Ravina would sew it into the hem. But what was the?
Roll it up.
He would roll it up. Yeah, they had this joke about this guy who took his talus to the cleaner. They charged him like a large. He says, why so much? He says, well, it was $10 just to wash it, but then the other $100 was to take out all those knots. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Starting a brayse kamachutenu noisen. How many strings do you put inside the tzitzis? The strong kasha, the Ramban. Rashi on Chumash says that the tzitzis reminds you of the 613 mitzvahs. So how do we get to that? So it says because tzitzis itself is the gematria of 600. Because tzaddik yud 90 plus 10 is 100. Tzaddik yud 90 plus 10 is 100. Plus the taf is 400. So that's 400 plus 200 is 600. And then you have the 5 knots and 8 strings, and then you're good. Ramban has a big issue with Rashi. Because first of all, tzitzis isn't spelled in the Torah with two yuds. It's only spelled with one yud. So it'd really be only 590. And then where are you getting the 5 knots and the 8 strings? It's a machlekes in the Gemara. If this was like the pshat in tzitzis, that it's the gematria, and because of the gematria, it reminds you have to think of the gematria. So if that's the whole thing, so then how do we have machlekes in here about this? Obviously, the mitzvah of tzitzis doesn't just like fall out according to Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai. The whole thing of tzitzis or isamais, it just disappears because you don't have the right amount to, like, the Ramban says no, that it's not because of gematrias that it reminds you. It reminds you because you have a red string or a string around your finger. It reminds you to do something, like you put your watch on the other hand. It's not because of a gematria and a thing that. Yeah. However, to answer Rashi, they say litzitzis, the lamed of litzitzis, one of them is the extra 30, which covers the yud, the extra yud. There's a way of resolving Rashi. Anyway, how many strings go into the tzitzis? Bishami Amr Mabah. 4 strings, and then you fold it over, and you have 8. Yisil Amr Shleisha. Yisil says, no, it's 3 strings. You fold it over, and you have 6. Okay. Machlekes. This is very important when we discuss things like this, because the Rambam writes that why do we need to mention people? Someone may ask, why do we need to have why do we have to learn Gemara? The halacha should just have the halacha. You have to learn all the people that we don't hold of. Like, why do we have to do that? So he says that someone may show up from a faraway place, say that he's Jewish and he has a tradition of how it's supposed to be. It's going to tell us that maybe tzitzis is only this amount of strings. We're going to say, wow, he has a tradition. We're going to question our tradition. And so we say like this, that no, we have in the Gemara an opinion like that, and we rejected that opinion. We know where you're coming from, and so we have the Gemara keeps us strong. That no one should come and make us confused about like what's really our tradition. Everything is in the Gemara. Okay.
Backbone. It's fine.
Basil says 3 strings, which are 6. Kamate mishaleshes. Here there's different interpretations, but one of the pshatim is how much of the strings should be hanging down after the braids. There's the braided part called the gedil. Then there's the anaf, which is the single strings that are just coming out. So how much should be the hanging down of the anaf? Now the anaf, if you remember, was 2 times the amount of the gedil. It was divided into thirds. 2/3, 66% was on the. So how much should be the 66%? So Bishami Amrim Arba, it means 4 fingers, which would mean that it's a total of 6 together, because you have to add half of that to be the other third. You have to add half of it to be the gedil. Basil Amrim Shalish. Basil say no, it's 3 fingers is the anaf, which means that half of that would be, I guess 4.5 would be altogether. Now it says Shalish Basil Amrim. When Basil says 3, achas mi'arba b'tefach. What they mean is that it's 1 of 4 of a tefach shel kol adam. It's a quarter of a tefach. Okay, now how big is a tefach? Still says 3 fingers. They mean that each finger is a quarter of a tefach? So that's the pshat, right? Rav Papa, now Rav Papa is going to explain how we get tefach. I'm sorry? Oh, so 1 second. Wait for the sheer tefach, then you see. Rav Papa, tefach deraisa, a biblical tefach is arba begudel, is 4 thumbs. When we say that a tefach is a fist, we don't really mean a fist. Really, a tefach is you take the thumb 4 times. It's 4 fingers. So here's 4 fingers. You say it's not true, because it's 4 thumbs, which is wider than a. So it's 4 thumbs. Shis biktana, which it turns out that if you're going to calculate the width of fingers. 6 pinkies is going to be the size of 4 thumbs. In chamish betilsa, and if you're going to have your third finger, there's another girsa here. It's going to be 5 of the tilsa. Now, tilsa somehow is actually, it's supposed to be chamish v'tilsa be'etzba. So it's a fifth and a third. That's the girsa. If you're using your etzba, which is the first finger, so then you would have 5 first fingers, would equal to 4 thumbs and 6 or 6 pinkies. So when Basil says it's it's 3 fingers, he means 3 thumbs. 3 thumbs. I guess that's what he means. Okay. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Arba b'teich arba. You have to hang the 4 strings that you're hanging. You have to put it within 4 fingers from the edge of the garment. You can't put it all the way up on the garment. You can't put it higher up. You have to put it within 4 fingers from the edge. Umishuleshes arba. And the size of the gedil is 4 fingers. The size of the gedil is 4 fingers. I thought we were talking about the anaf before. It's 4 fingers. Okay, so that means it's total. The whole thing is only 6 fingers. Okay. Rav Yehuda Amar Shleisha b'teich shalish. You only put in 3 strings according to Basil, right? And you put it in within 3 fingers from the edge, which is different than Rav Huna. This is Rav Yehuda, right? Rav Huna says 4 and 4. Rav Yehuda says 3 and 3. Three threads in within 3 fingers from the edge. And Mishalesh shalish, and it's only hanging down 3 fingers, right? Amar Rav Papa Hilchas. Rav Papa says the halacha is arba. We actually use 4 strands, b'teich shalish, and you put it within 3 fingers. Mishaleshes arba, and it's hanging down 4 fingers. L'meimra dislu shiura, where it says, you're telling me that you have measurements for how big the tzitzis have to be, but Baramino we have a contradiction to that. It says tzitzis, it says in Torah tzitzis, in tzitzis ela yetze, it only means that it's hanging down. In tzitzis ela mashu, tzitzis could also mean that it's only a drop, just a little bit hanging out. Kfar alu zikni beishamev zikni selias Yechanan ben Beseira. Ben Beseira. They went to the attic of Yechanan and Beseira, the elders of Shammai, the elders of Hillel, Bamro, and they said over there, tzitzis ein lashir. Tzitzis has no measurement. Kiyotzi by lulav ein lashir. They said lulav doesn't have any measurement. Now, what's going on over here? You're telling me all these measurements. We have both Shammai, both the elders of Shammai and the elders of Beis Hillel say that there's no measurement. My lav ein lashir klal. Obviously, there's no measurement if they said so. Gemara says light. This is no. Ein leishir l'mayla, aber yesh leishir l'mata. There's no measurement on how big they are, how long they are, but there is a measurement of how small. It can't be smaller than a certain amount. Like the lulav can't be smaller than a certain amount, but you can walk in with the lulav that's from here to the ceiling. You just have to be careful that you don't bang it. But it could be as tall as you want, right? People have sometimes they have like these very tall lulav. Same with tzitzis. You can have people that have tzitzis that are so long that they're hanging down to the floor. Remember, Ben Tzitzis Akesas was someone in the Gemara in Gittin. So he had long tzitzis that they would have to roll out carpets so they don't drag on the floor. Yeah. That's coming up. You did that already? It's coming up in 2 pages. Yeah. We're talking about originally when you put it in. Yeah. So there is a minimal size shear when it needs to be when you make it, but there's no maximum shear. If you don't say this, then we have to read what it said. It says lulav ein shear. It says a lulav has no measurement. If you want to tell me you want to tell me that there's no measurement at all, it's ba'atanan, but we have a clear mishnah. Lulav sheyesh by shleisha tvachim kedela ne'er by kasher. A lulav has to have 3 tvachim plus the amount to be able to wave it, which means an extra tefach. It needs to be 4 tefachim. The Gemara learns on the Mishnah. Ella, ainli shela maila has no maximum amount of yeshel shela mata, but it does have a minimum. Achanami, the same thing we'll say to tzitzis, ainli shela maila v'yeshel shir lamata. There's no maximum. There still is a minimum measurement. Taner Rabbanan, Sodan Abraisa, tzitzis, ain't tzitzis ala anaf. The tzitzis is referring to the anaf, which we translate as the single strands that are hanging out, the non-braided part. It says, the Navi says, Navi Cheskel, right, that he grabbed me by the locks of hair, which those are not braided. Those are just whiffs of hair. Okay. Amar Abaya says, Tzarech leperuda ki tzitzisa darmai. You have to separate them like a tzitzisa is like a ponytail. Koran, there's probably a picture. Aramean ponytail that on the top it's braided and on the bottom it hangs out like maybe like it puffs a little bit on the bottom. Do they do that with the ponytail? They put on like a band, like a one part, and then the rest like puffs up. Tan Rabbanan. Sodan Abraisa hitel ala keren. You put it mamish at the tip of the corner. You didn't bring it in. We said that you can bring it in up to 3 fingers or up to 4 fingers. We had 2 opinions before. If you put a mamish on the corner, oy al hagdil. What does it mean on hagdil? You tied single strands onto the braided part. Tip shot them in Rashi. Let me see how your says over here. It says if one affix tzitzis fringes to the tip of the or the border. No, the gedil here is being translated on as the border. Let's see, 6. Tomorrow will explain what is considered the tip. The border is a binding of heavy thread that is woven into the end of the garment to prevent it from tearing. That's Rashi's first shot. Alternatively, gedil means the fringe refers to the warp thread that is unwoven and extends beyond the last woof thread. Rashi's second explanation. You follow what's happening? The way they weave the garment, they could leave threads hanging out, which is basically what it looks like on our talesim that have not the ends of the garment. So the warp threads, the threads going in one direction, are sticking out further than the threads that went in the other direction. And so then you can just take those threads and tie it into a knot. So what's happening here is he's putting tzitzis on those warp threads. Yeah, but we weren't using that word before for gedil. We were using
for something else.
Shoes are in fact.
I know.
Safety first.
So that's so if you put it on the keren or on the gedil, it's ksheira. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov pesel b'shteim. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, he says that it's puzzle. K'man azla hadamar of gidel. Oh, this is confusing. Hadamar of gidel amarav. What happens? They throw the word into a name. Rav Gidel says in the name of Rav. He's actually a common student of Rav. Right? So Rav Huna Amarav, Rav Gidel Amarav, Rav Yehuda Amarav. That's one of the classic. Rav Gidel says in the name of Rav. It has to be that it's banging on the corner. Shenemar al kanfei vigdayim says on the corners of the garment. How do we learn that al kanfei vigdayim means that it's banging on the corner? I'm not sure, but it's al kanfei vigdayim somehow teaches me that it needs to be banging. Who would that go like? It says Kaman Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. That goes like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. That doesn't allow you to tie it to the corner. Basically, the tzitzis has to be that it's then it's knocking against the corner. You see, it has to knock against the corner. Bang, it can't be. You tie it on the corner, and it has to be neitefes. It has to be like touching, knock. Tzitzis.
Woo! That's day. Do that all day long.
They can't be tied to the edge because then it won't bang on the corner. It has to be tied a little above, and then it hangs on it. At least when you make it, that's how it has to be, right?
Why does Chabad have 2 minutes? All the tzitzis have only one. I mean, one
Right.
hole. Why do we have 2?
So the talus is actually 2 holes, but one of them is holding it down to the corner. Right? One is holding it in place. Talus. And these tzitzis. I'm not sure why we have that distinction. Why on our talesim is it different? The way we have the 2 holes. Right? The second hole of the talus only holds 1 strand. And the regular tzitzis holds all 4 strands, all 8 strands. The 2 holes.
By the way, wouldn't the second hole, which is closer to the
On the talus.
whatever, prevent the concept of the knock?
The opposite. That hole holds it against the corner. It's always there on the corner, on the edge.
Oh, which is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, where it's supposed to be.
The
The question is, if it has to always be against the edge, then why aren't all our tzitzis with one hole, another hole next to the edge to make sure it's always on the edge?
That's Chaim.
Chaim, Yitzi, you're being paged by Yitzi.
You mean motion?
No, Chaim June will
Chaim was
explain
on.
why there's.
What's that? I don't understand.
Is that
There's a knock.
once it has one hole?
Once I have one goes
What is he saying? Lachen cup?
Yeah, I was explaining that the tzitzis. I was explaining that the tzitzis have to knock against the garment. Neitefes. Apparently, though, in the talus, Bill is pointing out that in the talus doesn't knock against the corner; it's tied to the edge, so it's always against the corner. So neitefes must mean that it's like drooping down against the corner. Doesn't have to knock. Now the question is, why do we make a distinction between our regular tzitzis and our talus? One of them is tied close to the corner, and one of them is like hanging, and
What does Chaim have to say?
so Yitzi's asking what Chaim has to say about that.
A great question.
One of the teachers in the yeshiva told me, I'm not sure if it's, I didn't ask. He said maybe the pshat is that Rabbi Sharfstein, he teaches in the yeshiva. He told me that maybe this din of neitefes ala kanaf, so there's 2 ways of learning it. There's a way of learning it that it means when you make it, it needs to be on the corner. Other one is it always constantly needs to be on the corner. The talus, for some reason, it's constantly on the corner. And the tzitzis is only when you make it needs to be against the corner. Because when you tuck your tzitzis in, the tzitzis are going upwards, again, not on the corner. You tuck the garment in, the tzitzis go out of the pants. That's going upwards. Right? So it must mean that you don't have to have it constantly banging against the corner, as opposed to the talus gadol we do have. Anyway, it's a chiddush. And
Maybe
okay.
that's why other Hasidim always have the talus.
oh, they have it out, not to tuck it in. Yeah, maybe that's why Lubavitchers wear the shirt out. That's what my son was telling me. He says you have to have the shirt out because it does have to hang downwards,
Gorgeous.
so it bangs against the corner.
Only
So
I have to
you
apologize
have
to
this-
somebody.
But he
The background.
his Rosh Hashiva his Manal did not approve of that.
No.
They like when they tuck the get tucked in.
Maybe during davening it says Me'arba Kanfes Haaretz, so you need to have the specific corners. And while during your day, you're covering all corners.
Woo!
Yeah. By davening, you take it out. You're saying by davening, you're pulling it out of so it's against the corner. Okay.
And you're here now.
Amar Rab Yaakov, Amar Rab Yochanan. We said that this is like Rabbi Ben Yaakov that says that it needs to be hanging on the corner. Okay. Rab Yaakov said, "Name Rab Yochanan, tzarich sheyarchik k'malei kesher gudol." We said how far away from the garment. It shouldn't be more than that. It shouldn't be more than 3 fingers or more than 4 fingers. But how close to the edge should it be? So it says that the knot, the knuckle on the thumb. So from the knuckle to the tip of the thumb. It should be in between this amount to 3 or 4 fingers. The Itzrich the Rav Papa. We need Rav Papa that says about 3 fingers. The Itzrich the Rabbi Yaakov. We need Rabbi Yaakov that says about the thumb. Dimi the Rav Papa. If it would only tell me Rav Papa about the 3 fingers, Hava Mina, I would have understood Taich Shleisha Leilechik Tvei. It means anywhere within 3. It just can't be more than 3. The Kama the Mekar of Mali. The closer to the corner, the better. Itzrich the Rabbi Yaakov. I need Rabbi Yaakov to tell me no. The closer to the corner is not so good. It has to be out of 1 knuckle from the corner. The imid Rabbi Yaakov, if it would be Rabbi Yaakov, I would have thought that as long as it's out of 1 knot, then it's good. It should not be too close. The further away it is from the corner, the better. So I need Rav Papa to tell me, yeah, but it can't be more than 3 fingers.
Maybe that's how. How about solves both sides? So there's 1
Dollars?
Yeah, and then
Ravina.
Kodesh.
Yeah, usually we don't do that, but maybe like Pesach by night we do that by the Seder. The machlekes when you have to finish the Seder. So one night we do it like this, one night we do it like that. So we're making everyone happy. Ravina v'Rav Sama v'Yasvi Kamei de Ravashi. Ravina in Ravashi. This is the end of the Talmudic period, and Rav Sama is there as well. Chazi Rav Sama lekane the glimei de Ravina. Rav Sama takes a look at the corner of Ravina's garment, and the sasaru batza, that it was torn, and it was missing a little bit from the edge. So, which meant that the strings were now, because it started to unravel, strings were closer to the corner than they really should be. The strings are supposed to be the distance of the knot of the thumb, the knuckle of the thumb, distant from the corner, but because it started to get worn out, as it gets worn out, the garment at the edge will get worn out. So now it was within that amount, not more than that amount. So Amarle, so if someone says to Ravina, you don't hold the Rabbi Yaakov says, your strings are too close to the corner. Amarle, that's only while you're making it, not afterwards, not when it gets worn out. Ichsif. Ravina Rav Sama gets ashamed. Ravina just answers him like that. Ravashi says to Rav Sama, don't let this bother you. Chad minayu k'trei minan. One of them is like 2 of us. He's from Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, they're very sharp, they're very smart. I didn't realize Ravina was from Eretz Yisrael, but it says because Vira de Eretz Yisrael machkim, the ear of Eretz Yisrael makes you smart.
Woo! Is this where it's from, or he's just quoting it?
It's quoted. That is a Gemara in Baba Basra. Rabbeinu Gershon quotes that over here. Rabbeinu Gershon in my Gemara, and this Gemara has Rabbeinu Gershon on the side. It says, the Avira der Yisrael Machkim. Mishum who? Mishum der Ravina Eretz Yisrael have. Ravina was from Eretz Yisrael. Okay.
Wow.
The people in Eretz Yisrael say that it says that the land of Eretz Yisrael is holy. This one says the ear is holy. And this one says something else is holy. Depends which city. If you're in Tzfas, then you say the ear makes you smart. If you're in Shalayim, you say the ground is the.
Amen.
They have different traditions.
Wait, so why are we reading this? Because the one from Eretz Yisrael out trumped the other 2?
Yeah.
Where was Rav Murray? I could call a friend and read it.
Ravacha bar Yaakov Rami Arba v'oyefle Mayef Umaya lebeglima. He took 4 strings, Rama Arba, v'oyefle Mayef, and then he folded it over and he put it in the garment. Now, does that mean that he has 8 strings coming out, or does he have 16 strings coming out? How does it say in your commentary?
No,
then
this is how we do.
And then when he put it in the garment, did he have 16 strings coming out, or did he have 8 strings coming out?
No, 8.
8. Okay. Okay. Va'avaklu mevak, and then afterwards he would make a loop, slip knot. Okay. Kasavar, because he holds binan tamnaya beglima. It needs to be eight threads in the garment. Kihechi deleheve gedilim, so that you should have gedil. Now, gedil means 2 strings. Gedilim would mean 2 of 2 strings, which means 4 strings. So those 4, you fold it in half, and you put it through, and you end up with 8 strings.
It's interesting. Tosfos says that the slip knot he made with 7 strings, and then afterwards he used the 8th string to make a real knot, because you need a real knot or 2, as Charles Dickens.
Rav Yirmiyah, what is that? No,
$40.
Naftali's not on, but for the Charles Dickens.
Oliver Twist.
Oliver Twist, the guy go.
Pinch a penny or 2.
Yeah, pinch a penny or 2. So I said the 7.
Artful Dodger.
Okay. Rav Yirmiyah midifti ramni tamnaya dinu shitzer. Rav Yirmiyah midifti put in 8 strings, which would turn into 16 when it would come out. But he didn't do that slip knot. Mar the Ravina avid kedidan. Mar Bredrin did what we do, that he would put in 4 strings and it would fold over into 8 strings. Rav Nachman Ashkechel Ravada Barava Rami Chute become a varich lasis tzitzis. Should we go through this now? I think let me stop at Rav Nachman, because this is a new sugya about the bracha on making tzitzis. Let's leave it over here. See where we're holding? It's Rav Nachman. It's about halfway, a little over halfway down the page. Yeah. Okay, let's leave it here. Okay. Have a good day, everyone.
Out of curiosity, where